Why? Because I showed him on the move. Like back fist, side kick, sometimes turning kick.
Hey, you Chuck Norris?
Oh, Chuck Norris? Of course. We used to be buddy like this. I told my friend that I was born and raised in the mountain that I never was.
What was he like?
I told people that Chuck Norris and I were like this, and we never were. I make up lies about my parents. I make up lies about me.
You know, these kids rely on you. You're a strong role model. Someone they can count on. So why do you do it?
What are you talking about?
Chuck Norris. Come on. You're not to lie to these kids. We've talked about this before.
I told the lies because they make me feel good about myself. I just was so insecure that I felt if I didn't make myself out to be someone important, no one was going to like me. And all this time, there was something going on inside of me, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't want to look at it. I think that's the funny thing about being in denial. Even though things happened in my past, it's as if I was able to block them out of my conscious mind. Unfortunately, I find out when you do that, it starts coming out in really weird and different ways. I felt guilty. I felt it's all my fault. I believe that I brought all this stuff on, that I make my parents do this stuff. I have no idea why a kid should feel this way I just did. I was too afraid to run away. I didn't even know who to tell. Because I was growing up, my brother and sister would say, you can't tell anyone. If you tell anyone, they'll take us away. I think in junior high, I was getting older, and a lot of sex stuff kind of stopped. But every time my father would come near me for sex, I would just push him away, and they couldn't fool me into taking their aspirin anymore. But my father kept on beating me. You know, in high school, I got fed up with all the insanity around my parents and the violence that was going on around me. I didn't want to carry a gun. I didn't want to carry a knife because they could be used against me. So I got involved in martial arts. I got so good in martial arts that I was invited to a national competition. But I never beat up my father, although I wanted many, many times. I guess the closest thing I ever got to beating him up was grabbing him by the shirt and kind of jerking him around and saying, never again. You touch me, you touch my brother, you touch my sister, you touch my mother again. It's never going to happen again. Never again. And you know what? It didn't. I met the woman who was to be my wife at a coffee house. I saw her sitting there, and I thought she was an angel. My wife is very intelligent, and that threatened me. I didn't graduate high school until I was 20 years old. I flunked 4th grade. I flunked 6th grade twice. I flunked my freshman year of high school. When I did graduate, I got all B's. But I still believed that was really stupid. And I thought, why did I marry this woman? What was wrong with me?
I had a master's degree. I traveled all around the world. I'd won several awards. And yet I had absolutely no self-esteem. I had a difficult time even speaking in front of people. Here I am, a scientist, an occasional lecturer, and I don't like speaking in front of people.
Within a short while, there was a real turmoil in my marriage. And I had been lying so much, I need lies to cover my lies. Then my wife discovered I've been lying. That she falling in love with another man anyway. And everything was coming undone. And I knew I had to do something, or I was going to lose her.
When I got older, I was able to get myself into therapy. I joined a 12-step program for incest survivors. And since then, I've been led into some pretty intense recovery. I learned how to cope with the incest. You see, I had taken the attitude that everything was my fault, that I was responsible for everything. I had to be in charge of everything. What I learned was, that is not a good way to look at yourself.
And I said, Fred, as a little kid, you survived your parents. Now you got to face the music. You got to face up to this stuff. I started seeing a therapist. And I told him what happened when I was a kid. I started crying as it all came out. I began cleaning up my slate. I went into a therapy and started going to 12-step meetings for incest survivors. I began to face the horror of my past.
It was the first time that I began to make sense out of these irrational fears of mine. My fear of men, my fear of failure, and my guilt for sometimes thinking that I actually hated my mother, which had plagued me all my life. So that in turn made me sit down and go through the memories of my childhood, regardless of how painful they were. And that was something I'd never been willing to do before.
I think it took me a while to find meetings I like, because some of them allow perpetrators to go there if they were incest victim too. In other words, they allow people like my father to come to these meetings. If it turns out that my father had been abused as a child, personally, I couldn't deal with that. Even if they're sorry what they did, I can't forgive them yet. When I go to these meetings, a lot of my anger comes up, and I don't want to go up on them because they didn't hurt me.
I was held hostage by the feelings of shame and guilt from my childhood. I thought that I was an evil person. So, steps 6 and 7, they were really helpful to me because they named and removed those character traits that had caused me so much pain. Things like self-pity, anger, resentment, all of which had really hurt me. I had to prepare myself to let go of them. I mean, even if they were justifiable in my mind, I was the one who got hurt if I continued hating someone from my past.
Part of the 12-step program is making amends. And that means making amends to ourselves as well as everybody else. Nobody expected me to go to my parents to apologize for hating them as much as I did. There's no pressure like that at all. But I thought that making amends to myself would mean finding someone else who would acknowledge what had happened to me. My father was dead, and my brother and my sister couldn't face up to what really happened. Whenever I mentioned it, they just said they didn't want to talk about it.
I always saw everything, including myself, in extremes. So I had to learn to be more realistic. I wasn't an evil person, and I wasn't a perfect person either. For me, the most serious after effect of the abuse has been my disassociation. That's how I dealt with the abuse when it was happening. And that's why I didn't have any memories. I just imagined them all away.
My mother got Lou Gehrig's disease, and I knew she was going to die. She was hospitalized at that point, and I wanted to confront her. Not to be angry with her, not to blame her, not to punish her. It's not about punishing parents. It's about getting to the cause of the turmoil in my life and facing it.
Because of this process, I was able to come to terms with the deepest secret of all. And that was the fact that I actually felt pleasure when I was being molested. I learned that I was not an evil person, and that those feelings were not the cause of being abused. That's the miracle of the program for me. Just to have someone confirm the pain and the hurt and the struggle of trying to put your life back together again and see it all start to happen again. The benefit of the meetings is that you can talk about the fears that have stemmed from your childhood. You can talk about your lack of self-esteem, the lowest points in your life. And the people around you, they just shake their heads or nod their heads and they know what you're talking about. There's no criticism.
I think about how my parents grew up. My father's mother used to get beat up by my grandfather. At one time, he beat her so bad, he broke her neck. So she ran away with the two boys. For a while, they were living in this broken-down food store. And back then, nobody knew anything about psychology. They didn't have the 12 steps. So what were the kids supposed to do? How are adults going to handle the problems from their youth? Well, they're not going to. They're going to become abusive themselves. And that's exactly what happened.
When you're a survivor of incest, you deny it all your life. And to have someone say, I understand, it's an incredible affirmation. There's something about being with someone who's been through what you've been through. And all your years of isolation and secrecy and fear, they just melt away.
I get a lot of strength from the meetings. I really enjoy doing 12-step work and sharing my story with others. Not just the horrible things that happened when I was a kid, but the good things I've accomplished as well. My marriage is fine now, and I finally feel content with who I am.
Jennifer and Fred are among millions of people worldwide who are conquering devastating addictions and related dependencies through regular participation in a 12-step program. We are indebted to them for their courage and candor in sharing their stories with us.